city.
This is the City of Florence's Memorial Day Parade.
That's
And
correct.
Memorial Day falls on the
Monday.
Monday, is it the 28th?
Last Monday.
May 29.
May 29. We've had, what, people carry our banner? Is that
Yeah.
what we traditionally do?
We can get some old farm equipment usually, and sometimes we can get some old cars.
Well, I have a previous commitment for Memorial Day. So if there's any of you that can and will participate, can I just let them tell you, Virginia, will that be fine?
Right,
Okay, just let Virginia know. And with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker. This is the Appalachian Beekeeper, Granville Griffith. This is the first time I've met him. I've talked with him on the phone, and I just think he's just going to be really interesting. I know he's a retired teacher, speaks throughout the state of Kentucky and maybe other places, but I'm sure he'll share that with you. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Excuse me, before we get started, during the course of the evening, I have a little bit of history to tell you. I've lived with bees practically all my life. When I grew up in the head of a hurricane holler. There was 3 sisters younger than me and 2 brothers older than me and 1 brother younger than I. And he was the baby. He got all the tit. He's a big guy, and Arnold can tell you about that. We grew up on a farm that you either had to make it, grow it, barter for it, or you just didn't have it. So Dad, one time I'll not forget, I was going to Lee's Junior College and farming 5 acres of tobacco to pay the tuition for me and my 2 sisters. Well, he told me, he said, son, he said, how do you like doing this work? I was cleaning the barn out. I said, well, Dad, it's not too bad. He said, well, you want to do this all your life? And I said, no, I don't think I want to. Well, I had a picture here I was going to show you. I did a program Tuesday night at the Breathitt County Farm and Home Show. And I took some of my stuff up there, and I don't have it. But he says, son, do you want to do this? I said, no, Dad, I guess I don't. But it's getting awful hard. College tuition, and I had missed 2 classes. I had missed a 2-hour class at Lee's College. I missed 4 days, and it was tobacco stripping time. And their money and her money was dependent upon me paying my tuition. Well, she saw fit with a 94.2 average to give me a C. I didn't think that was fair, so I dropped out. The Army got me then, and I went to the Army and attended a couple classes at Austin Peay State University, just enough for them to send me all these letters wanting donations for everything. But I am in their directory. Yeah, you know, but no, Austin Peay was a nice class. I took some psychology courses there while I was in the service. But I'm just thankful that Dad got me out of the manure pile. But manure is good for your garden. Boy, if it's composted, it doesn't smell bad at all. Well, in the course of the evening, we're going to introduce you to beeswax. That's a byproduct of what the bees are really good for. And if you'll notice here, we go down to the thrift store in Newport and we pick up molds that nobody else would want. They're dirty, but they're not too dirty for beeswax. We did a program. My grandson, he's 6 years old. He makes this kind of thing. And my granddaughter, she likes these kinds of things. That's a little angel. We found that for 50 cents, the mold of that down in the thrift store. And my grandson, we were doing a program for his class, and the teacher says, now kids, be careful handling this stuff. You break that wax, and you'll ruin it. Richie walked over and got his teacher by the hand. He said, Mrs. Kraft, That's okay. If we break that, my grandpa and I, my papa and I, we'll just make something else. We'll melt it and we'll make something else. But that's with beeswax. Beeswax is biodegradable. You know, I mean, well, they find it still washed up on the shores that possibly could be centuries old. And they have found it up along the Norwegian coast. I mean, up along the eastern coast of the seaboard, where the Norwegians and the early explorers came into this country by that way. And they have found it in the soils up there, where the missions were established. Because I don't need to tell you that churches love to have beeswax 51 to 60% or better in their candles, because if they don't, well, I mean, with that, beeswax melts at a very much higher temperature than paraffin or other waxes. And so in the church, when those hell and brimstone sermons come and it gets hot in there, those candles don't bend over. They stand straight up, and there's no drip, and they just make it. Well, we have, you want a lobster? We have lots of things to do, but I hope that you'll enjoy the taste of honey. But now let me explain something to you. My granddaughter, she's 10 years old. We've been all over Kentucky. She's been Louisville. We've been up in Ohio, Indiana. We've done programs everywhere. She's as crazy about bees as her papa is. Now, we were in Owensville, Ohio, and we ordered these honey sticks. We do not put our honey in honey sticks, contrary to what you might find from a website in Chillicothe that said they were eating some of Mr. Griffith's honey. That's not true. We do not put our honey into honey sticks. We don't have a machine, and it costs too much money to ship it there and get it shipped back. But this young 4-H kid ate some honey, and the teacher called me later and asked me what was in that honey. And I said, ma'am, I'll give you the name of Better Bee Incorporated. That's where we ordered our sticks. And you call them. But a little girl had an allergic reaction before she got home to some pollens that was in that honey. Well, let me start here with this. This is probably me when I was a youngster. We used to have a metal tub, and we set it behind the wood cook stove, and that's how we took a bath. And the water doesn't get too dirty after 3 or 4, but you know, we maybe there was 8 of us kids, and you take 4 taking a bath one night, and 4 tomorrow night. We stay clean. But I do have some pictures that we're going to be talking about later on, and give you a chance to see. I have a patent, and someone referred to me the other day. They knew I was working on some historical things, and they said, hey, wait a minute. You got a patent? I said, yeah, on a parasite reducing one. They said, well, you could be a cornfield Edison. Does anybody know who a cornfield Edison might be?
Frank Gilbert.
Pardon?
Frank Gilbert.
Yeah, here in Boone County, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to ask you something. Do you guys do very much oral history?
Yes.
Well, let me say this, that I was out here interviewing some folks about this meeting here, and I ran into an old man, and he was crying, sobbing, and I asked him, I said, what's wrong, mister? He couldn't talk. He was just so broken. Way out the end of a road, you know where Route 8 goes out to a dead end out there? There's some houses beyond that. Mm-hmm. And so I went there, and I said, man, you look distraught. What's wrong? He said, I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 78. I said, well, what's wrong? He said, well, Dad just smacked the crap out of me. I said, man, what did he smack you for? He said, I sassed Grandpa. Well, now, if he's 78, that would put his dad about, you guys need to be out there, I'm telling you. Well, there's one other one I want to share with you, and I have a cousin that needs a job. He needs a job in the worst way. He went to the Cincinnati Music you know, got a degree in music, and he was looking for a job a few weeks ago, and they invited him to play for a funeral. They were going to give him $25 to play for a funeral. Well, he walked in, and you know, normally you walk into the family and you ask them, what would you like for me to play? So he did that. He walked in, and they told him, just play something lively. Said, play something. Yeah, said she was a real swinger. Says, just play something lively. Well, he went to playing. Man, 2 of those people walked up and got him to the arm and just ushered him out of the house. Well, he told me a few days later, he said, I want to get my $25. I said, well, John, what? Did you ask them for it? Yeah. He said, they won't pay me. I said, well, man, why won't they pay you? He said, I don't know. I don't even know why they threw me out. Other than, I said, well, tell me. He said, well, Granville, I want to ask you something. He said, how in the world was I to know her name was Susie?
Wake up with
Okay, enough for that. We have formed a co-op, and last summer we had our first field day at Tony Vogel's farm over in Campbell County. It's supposed to be in Silver Grove, but it's not. It's in Melbourne. And we had just about what we had there, but we thought of a good idea, and that is the co-op members. We would, first of all, charter our organization with the state, and also we would plot our counties. We're from all around northern Kentucky, but here, those circles indicate within a 2-mile area of our bees. Bees will travel 2 miles. This is how much of Boone County we're pollinating. Now, here is Campbell County, our bees, and the colors indicate a specific beekeeper. And this is Kenton County. Now, we're trying to get we've got folks from down in Gallatin County, over in Bracken County, and we're hoping to get those. But we're doing our best to pollinate for you and for us, because the food supply is definitely linked to pollination. Because if you remember, when God created the world, he said that the flowers, the trees, everything would come after its kind. And whether we believe in creation or evolution, you cannot cross a rattlesnake with a big Hereford steer. You just can't do it. They don't have the same DNA. So we have to know that honeybees are pollinators. And that's why there was a Mr. Thiel, and his wife, his widow, here in Florence, gave me permission this morning to use his name. I met him at Big Boone in 1996. And Mr. Thiel was telling me that he and a friend were working with preserving and propagating blue orchard bees. And that's what the little boxes are there right in front of Arnold. We are doing everything we can to bring back the native pollinators. For 10 years I've been working with them. I work with the University of Kentucky at Quicksand Substation. Dr. Jones is the horticulturalist up there that's experimenting. We have gourds that large. Now honeybees, as you know, do not do a lot of pollinating of gourds, because gourds, the blossom is open at nighttime. And it requires moths, bumblebees, carpenter bees, and I did not, yes, here's my carpenter bees. Now, carpenter bees is a scourge of the homeowner, because I'm going to pass these around, if I may, and let you look at them. But these are, now be careful with these. My carpenter bees are inside of there. They're in a cocoon. They're in a cocoon form now. And those carpenter bees are great pollinators of everything but blueberries. My experience with the big blossoms are those that are so deep and so narrow and slender that the carpenter bee can't get in there. I've observed them eating a hole in the side. And when they eat a hole in the side, and other pollinators come to get down in that blossom, my kids and neighbor kids take shortcuts through my yard. Well, that pollinator takes a shortcut and goes in there and gets the nectar and leaves. Never gets the pollen from the stamen and gets it down to where it's supposed to go. So that flower does not become pollinated. Okay. All right, the Boone County landscape has changed since 1789 when the first formal settlement of Tanner's Station in Petersburg was established. Cave Johnson was one of the big farmers there, and I called my friend down in Walton, Mr. Herbert Johnson, Bud we call him, on Service Road. I called him and asked him if there was any relation. I said, hey, you guys are from Virginia. He said, well, we are probably related, but I do not know them. I know another friend that lives down in Richwood. His name is Dearsing, and there was a big Dearson back in England that worked with developing bees, and but there's no relation there. But Boone County could be rich in descendants of bee persons. So there was Ephraim Tanner of Hopeful Lutheran Church in 1805. He could also have had knowledge of the value of beeswax in his church. And there were other churches, the Burlington Presbyterian Church in 1830, and the East Bend Methodist in 1867, Big Boone in 1888. And by the way, there was a Boone County farmer that in '97 decided to go to Florida and take care of his orange grove, had 11-acre orange grove. Well, he called me back. Well, when he left, we got him together 6 hives of bees to pollinate his orange grove. Well, he called back and said, I got to have some more. I said, okay, we'll get them for you. So my granddaughter had some queens, and he has queens in the house. He no longer owns his orange grove. He's 86. But he comes back 2 years ago, I believe. Yes, 2 years ago, he comes back, and we took bees out of Big Bone Church in the front. Jonathan Barker and the park wanted us to do it because the fact that I have been collecting, we took bees out near Idlewild, out of an old log cabin out there, and there was some weatherboarding on the outside, so I stole enough of that weatherboarding. I took it off, and it's going to lay there and rot anyway, and I took it home with me, and so it just fit. And the square nails just fit Big Bone Church. So Jonathan knew I had that, and he wanted me to do it so that we could put it back like it was. We took those bees out. So the reason I mention the churches is this: as sure as we can be, churches love to use beeswax candles. And bees were a natural back then. I mean, pollinators were. But if they brought bees over here, well, let's go on. Now, the Dinsmore Homestead. A few years ago, Lyle Allen, who was president of the Northern Kentucky Beekeepers and the secretary for about 15 years, back in the late 70s and early 80s, he had answered a request by the Dinsmore Homestead to take bees out of the smokehouse, or was it the wash house? When you go in, it's the house farthest on the right. Now, this was back about '94. They invited me out to look at that to see if I could get him out because he was unsuccessful. Well, it was too far for me to go, and I might have been still teaching then. But the ladies, they informed me there, the curators or the receptionist informed me that the Dinsmore ladies actually took care of the bees, while their men were away fighting in the war. So they had to sustain their lifestyle. They probably used the beeswax, as my mother did when I was 5 or 6 years old, because we couldn't afford jar lids. And we had an old hog rifle that we, if you remember back in the 40s, there was a lid, L-E-A-D, lid, L-I-D. And we would melt those down and make our bullets out of them. Well, they had a piece of glass in the center. And there was a rubber gasket that went around the top. Well, we melted those down. So my mother, when she had the beeswax, she would use that to seal her jellies and apple butter and stuff like that. And the only thing with beeswax and sealing your jars was beeswax will contract when it gets cold. And you have to pour the second. You have to pour the second liquid beeswax in there to seal around where it is. It contracts. It just draws up. Okay. Now the Presbyterian today, they like their candles to be 51% beeswax. Now there was a Charles F. Muth that lived here, and well, he had bees in northern Kentucky, but his brother had a store in Cincinnati, Fred W. Worth Muth Company, and they sold honey and beehive products. They sold Dedant bee supplies. Dedant is the largest bee supply company in the world.